All right, if you just joined us, it's still Journalist Hangout. I still have GKB right here and Kaide Ladende. So let's move straight to our third conversation. For several communities in Plateau State, north-central Nigeria, it's still a long way to peace. This follows the resurgence of killings in some areas in the state. In a fresh attack on Zike community in Kwal district of Basa local government area, report says about 40 persons have been killed on Sunday night. This attack comes barely 2 weeks after the 2nd of April killings in Bokkos local government area, where more than 50 persons were killed. Meanwhile, troops of 3 Division of the Nigerian Army Operation Safe Haven have rescued 16 passengers kidnapped along the Jos Mangu Road in the state. According to the media officer of the Operation Safe Haven, Major Samson Zakum, the rescue effort was achieved after troops on Operation Lafian Jama discovered an empty vehicle abandoned by the roadside and eventually combed the bush. The kidnappers, who succumbed to the troops' superior firepower, abandoned the victims and fled. I think the first thing to say is to extend our condolences, to the government and people of Plateau State. But
it's unfortunate.
This killings in Plateau State, what do you think is the underlying reason for the renewed attacks? Will you say is colored by politics, political reasons, or religious reasons? I mean, talk to me. What is the reason here?
You see, coincidentally or fortunately, we had the Governor of Plateau State on this channel that's Beyond the Headlines on Friday, and to a large extent it wasn't shying away from the real issue. As much as when it comes to security issues, state actors are very careful with their choice of words.
Sure.
You understand? One thing he mentioned is that this is a case of in a local parlance, more of land grabbing. This is a case of people who have been very hospitable, very accommodating. Don't forget, I remember my first visit to Jos in 2001. I remember that, slogan, home of peace and tourism. And the crisis started around 2002. I'm talking about the recent crisis that has refused to leave us. Started around 2002, and I was like, that couldn't have been the Jos I went a year ago. So this is to let you know that the people are quite hospitable. Probably the word is they've lost their guard in being accommodating to people.
That's another one.
It is now taking a very, very negative impact on them. And like you said, why this recurrence? Why are we having these issues? I think the political will is beginning to come up. When I listened to the statement from the president that was echoed by the NSA when he visited this last attack, when he said that this will not happen again.
Yes, it did.
Yes. So I saw a very, very, what's the word now? A very, very ambitious statement from the president. And he needs to now look at the reality that beyond the kinetic approach, the non-kinetic approach, which is dialogue, needs to be heard. We need to know, why do we kill ourselves? Because whether you call them settlers, whether you call them locals, these people have stayed together. They've lived together. And I do not think, this is my view, I'm not a security expert, I do not think the way out is to chase them completely away. We need to know how this hatred has festered so much that you will go in the middle of the night and waste.
It's not middle of the night, it was 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Good. In this case, it's even 8 p.m. But I'm looking at the pattern of attacks all this while. So it's just to say that the non-kinetic approach has to be heard. And the chief of army staff mentioned that.
Yeah, he talked about political, let's
kill if you want us to kill. We can do all these things. That's not his word anyway. But he's saying that, please, there must be a serious dialogue.
A serious dialogue. Because, GKB, in the last 1 year, Plateau State has enjoyed peace, relative peace. And this can be credited to the governor, Governor Caleb Mutfwang. But what is the real cause of the problem? Is it herder crisis? Is it politics? Is it... And who are those fueling this hatred that you talk about?
He mentioned it. The governor mentioned.
Well,
we need to know that.
Yeah, it's not really new. That's why I'm not very happy. We've seen this circle of violence across the country with the same root cause. Settlers and indigenes fighting over limited resources, mostly land. And it's going to, don't forget, even in our own backyard here, in Ife,
yeah,
even in Ilobu, just happening also now. Don't forget what's going on in Warri for a long time.
Insecurity and...
We seem to forget the fundamental core elements of hospitality. Yeah, my people will say, don't bite the fingers that
feeds you. Okay.
But the problem is that, like, I once wrote a paper, I call it the curse of the capital city. All over the world, even in Nigeria, there are certain people who bear the burden of people coming to their land. And in a generation or two, they become a minority in their own land. Because maybe most of them because they are capital cities or because they are centers of economic activity. I wrote the paper, I think, about 10, 20 years ago. I'm not really sure. But I call it the curse of the capital city. And I was using the example of when I was in Port Harcourt as regional head. And I remember a case of people of Owerri complaining that people of Olu has practically bought out
all the lands there.
The land in Owerri. And these are brothers. They don't even come to Lagos
or
those other states. The problem we have, and this is only going to be solved, is what we are shying away from.
What is the solution?
How do you define indigenship and settlership? At what point do they blur to become one, or at which point do your rights stop and mine begin? That's where the problem is always coming from. Somebody has been living with you for 3 generations, 4 generations, you practically don't know anywhere else as home but that place. But when it comes to politics, we all agree that we must protect indigenous. Because if you allow settlers to overpower them, they will sooner or later disappear. That is not what we want. That's all over the world. Nativity is coming to the fore. It's dangerous, I agree. But that's the reality when you are fighting over scarce resources. So I think something must be done, and something done fast, not by the Plateau State government alone, but even Nigeria as a whole. Where do we draw the line? What are the rights do you have? How do we protect indigenous? I know that in Kenya, they made provisions in the parliament for the youth, for the women. And nowadays, others have even made provision for indigenous. It's that where it is obvious that if this is a free and fair election, indigenous cannot win. You understand
I get you.
That no matter how they do it, unless they make special provisions for them, they do not have the numbers.
Now, another thing is, let us now look at the response time. When it happened in Bokos, I'm sure it happened for hours. Where were the security agents?
That's a $1 million question.
Where were they? Now, how would you assess, what's your assessment of the government's response, not just the state governments, the federal government's response to this renewed attacks? Where were they?
You see, like you said, in this particular attack, it's shocking because just a few days before then, the IG deployed, tactical assets. With helicopters and everything. I want to believe there is not an audio declaration.
After the event had happened.
Before this one.
Okay,
I'm talking of what happened in Bokos.
After the event had happened.
Yes.
That was when
so they deployed it, and this must be in response to the commander-in-chief, tall order. The NSA went there, the chief of army staff went there. We saw the military in front of camera. That's what I'm trying to call the attention to, because I'm trying to react to that critical question you raised. If you are there, what is the level of your presence in this place? What is the level of intelligence Could it be that they all went to Bokos and left out
exactly.
or this particular area? There could have been intelligence about areas that are vulnerable, those places that we can call, what do you call it, the flashpoints now, things that should help us. Because it is sad. The sad commentary is almost 28 to 30 states have military occupation when we are not in war. You understand? And yet we still have some daredevils, you know, carrying out this kind of killing. So hours. I totally feel that beyond the military might, beyond the police, whatever, this non-kinetic definition of indigenship need to be heard.
Need to be heard.
We need to know, because at this stage, somebody should not be saying, you are a foreigner, therefore we are going to kick you out. Oh, I cannot give this house to you because you are from this tribe. I cannot allow you to do this.
These are the things, Nigerian.
You know, this thing has created this kind of hatred among ourselves. So the bigger conversation, the bigger picture is, we do not want to have this conversation in 10 years' time.
Still talking about that, because there were allegations that they heard rumors that these assailants were coming to attack.
Yeah.
That they heard it 3 days before.
And they informed the security forces.
And yet this thing happened. Back to that question. Where were they? The security agents?
I would not be surprised if there are fifth columnists operating within our armed forces. Because I know Plateau very well. And it's not only Plateau, I'm even talking about certain parts of the north.
Okay.
Mostly, these areas are mostly savanna. That means from the air, you can see movements. How can people move in that kind of level with the kind of, let's say there's no moon.
Okay.
Let's say it's dark. And yet nobody could assess the fact that these are foreign elements coming to a community. What happened to the first responders? What happened to the vigilante? What happened to the people that were empowered mainly to ensure that people were kept at alert when attacks are coming? I'm not a security person, but I've spoken to a lot of people, and they keep saying the same thing. They get to know very late. Their response time is poor. I said, but that's why you created first responders. That's what they are for. That's why you said you want community people to work with the police, work with the army.
Intelligence.
So that this can be, where they have the force to call you. And they thought, we thought, some of us, old school journalists, but we thought that the reason why coups have not happened was because of the fact that we have access to telephone. That people can call things on time. Same thing is happening because the army cannot be 10 kilometers away and they have the information something is like this is happening. And nothing was done until after the fact.
Now, how can this, going forward, what should the government be doing differently to forestall this from happening?
I know we don't have enough manpower.
You think the military is overstretched?
Not only the military, the entire infrastructure. Military,
okay, we have someone from Jos calling in. Olayinka from Jos. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk.
Hello?
Go ahead. Let's talk.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I think the problem of Plateau, each time they want to ask questions, they should always ask the inhabitants. We the non-indigenous, like Yorubas, Igbos, and those are the people that can tell the real truth, what is happening on the Plateau. As that man in black suit have rightly said, Plateau State is the most hospitable place on earth. The indigenous people of Plateau State are the most tolerable and the most tolerant people you can find anywhere in the world. Yes, they accepted all inhabitants currently staying in Plateau with open hands, including the Hausas and Fulani. These people accepted them. But now, just because of their hospitable nature and they are very, very calm and easy to go people, majority of other tribes are now trampling on them. That's exactly what is bringing this problem. There are a lot of rural areas that there are no security presence and things are happening. And honestly speaking, not even a bit of it is being covered until the federal government look into the aspect of this is where your citizenship, if you have stayed in a place for more than 40 years, 50 years, even they gave your birth your parents there, you have limitations. Indigenous are indigenous. These people have accommodated us. I'm a Yoruba by tribe. I was born and brought up here. I'm in my late 40s. We met these people. They have never changed to be Yoruba. We are still living in peace with them. A typical Plateau person.
All right, thank you.
When you respect me, they will even respect you more than how you are respecting them.
Thank you so much, Olayinka. I appreciate you for that one. Now, while we bash the military, that where were they and all of that,
No, we're not bashing them.
They also did something, okay? Because troops of the 3 divisions of the Nigerian Army, you know, they rescued 16 passengers. You know, kudos to them. Your thoughts on this?
So it's just to say that our question is, we don't want to go into jungle justice.
Sure.
We don't want to subscribe to reprisal attack. We don't want to go into some kind of escalation of violence. So where do we run to? We run to the security agents. So that's all about what we're saying. You know, it's sad that, you know, that the people can just travel and they were kidnapped. Exactly. And thank God like that they were rescued. You know, you know, it's worrisome because of the things we read in the news. You know, while I was traveling, like I told you, there was so much fear. Somebody was even telling me, you need to leave Benue State before 4 p.m. And I was like, has it gotten this bad? You know, we shouldn't be that way. I think there is reason for us to live in peace, to love one another, and I'm yet to understand those behind this mayhem. What do they stand to gain? Even if it's for political reasons.
I think the problem, as you said, basically is the fire demand on the phone.
Yeah, they're called in.
Indigenous are becoming a dangerous species. There are people who are coming into spaces that belong to other people and chasing them out. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yes.
There are a lot of rural areas in Plateau, right? A lot of rural areas all over the country have been inhabited by people who have no rights. And I use the word loosely. Who have no rights without government support to take over those lands. That's why the federal government and the constitution said that the state governors are in charge of land. So the state governors should also be in charge of state police. Because if you are supposed to make a law, you should also be in a position to enforce the same law.
True.
And that's one of the problems we face. It's not peculiar to Plateau. Same thing is happening in Benue, as you are aware. Same thing is happening in Southern Kaduna. People should be protected. I keep saying it. We cannot say because you are expanding, I'm from Ibadan, I'm a Yoruba man, that puts me on top of the food chain. But there are some people who come from tribes that are so small that the entire people put them in this compound, they will need to swallow them. So my mindset may be different from them because they have so few people, less under 1,000, under 1 million. And then you come to their land and you override them, and by second generation, they become a minority. I don't have the answer. I'm just saying that these are the challenges we face going forward. And there must be a way to balance between the constitutional given rights to stay anywhere in the country, as well as protect indigenous.
Absolutely. Indigenous. All right, then. A beautiful conversation. Right, let's move straight to our fourth and final conversation. Now, the statement.